Mountain. Seeing as you're tuning into my YouTube channel, you might be interested in my podcast that I have on Patreon, where I cover a wide variety of subjects, where I don't have to think about what might be clickable on YouTube or what gross majority of people are interested in. On my Patreon podcast, I can really concentrate on you guys and what you want to know. And that's what I talk about in the podcast. You can send me private messages and I'll answer those questions in the podcast. And yeah, if you are interested in that sort of thing, just go to the link in the description. It's the Patreon page for Natural Gallant Bodybuilding, and it's only $5 a month. So you got nothing to lose except for your $5.
Train the muscles, not the joints.
Welcome back to Natural Gallant Bodybuilding. Mountain. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Look at that. If you look closely, you can see somebody skiing down the side there. So today I'm going to talk about the one exercise that I gave up during my natural bodybuilding competition career, in which I won the nationals. I got my pro card in the WNBF, and I got third place in the heavyweight division in the natural universe in the WNBF pro division. I had my Canadian championship. I won the Western Canadians 3 years in a row. 2 times I won the overall, and 1 time I just won my division. I got second in the natural universe in the ABA 2 years in a row. So I did quite a bit in natural bodybuilding, but this is the one exercise that I had to give up in order to choose bodybuilding first instead of my ego. Can you guess what that exercise was? I've talked about it at length, but in case you guys don't know, and I'm going to say this is a trigger alert because some of you guys who are heavily attached to this exercise are going to hate me for this, but just tune into the whole video so that way you understand why I discarded this exercise for my own personal reasons and why you might want to consider it if certain things are happening. Now, that exercise was the powerlifting deadlift, because the powerlifting deadlift is how I injured my back when I was around 18 years old. I was doing it wrong, of course. I was rounding my back and I hurt one of my discs in my lower back. And many years after that, deadlifting became a liability, because every time I would deadlift, my back would flare up for several days and it would affect my squatting, all my leg training, or any other type of back training I was doing. And if anything, it would deter me from being able to train intensely on all the other muscle groups. Not to mention that even when my back was good many years later and I was deadlifting from the floor just for a bit, just to try it, I got up to, over 400 pounds for reps and stuff. And what was happening was I felt like there was all this trauma in my lower back from deadlifting, but not necessarily the soreness in the major muscle groups that I wanted to grow for being on a bodybuilding stage. Now, of course, I did get a little bit of trap soreness and a little bit of lat soreness here and there, but I got that anyway from bent over rows and from doing a different variation of the deadlift called the Romanian deadlift. Now, the neat part about the Romanian deadlift was I could use a range of motion that worked, that allowed me to keep my lower back in a proper, flat, or slightly arched position, but at the same time, it didn't leave my back feeling like there was trauma or potential for injury. Now, if you're deadlifting and you're noticing that your lower back doesn't feel like a car accident the next day, it just feels like a good muscle type soreness, and you notice you get a good overall feel in the hamstrings and the upper back and the traps and so forth, then I'd say by all means stick with the deadlift. It's a good exercise for you because you're built for it. But for myself, because of long femurs, short Tyrannosaurus Rex arms, it just seemed like it was just not the right exercise for me. And I had the blessing of being able to watch my brother deadlift too. And I would always, yell across the gym, doggy back, because as soon as he'd get down into the deadlift position, I'd see his lower back just round, just slightly. And that was how I injured my back. And I knew that that was not the right place for me. And it didn't matter how much stretching I did, how much hip work, whatever. There was still an exploitation of the lower back ligaments and tendons as opposed to the muscles. So after discarding that exercise, I noticed that not only was my leg training better because I wasn't fighting the pre-exhaustion of the lower back during my squat workouts, but I was also not nursing an overwhelming inflammation and soreness and potential for the back to go out all the time when I was training my other body parts, right? So I wasn't nursing a wound. So basically, like I said before, it's like a bird hitting a window. Some people get attached to certain exercises even when they're not working for them. And I want to encourage you to discard an exercise if it's not working for you, if no matter what you do, and no matter how you change it, it's screwing you up. Either change how the exercise is being done, if that does work, but if it doesn't work, no matter what you do, then discard it and do something else. And that's why I started doing the Romanian deadlift instead. I found that I was able to keep the most amount of constant tension on the muscles with the least amount of potential for injury, and therefore I got great hamstring development. All my competition pictures, you can see my hamstrings were really well developed, and that was from the Romanian deadlift. And my back developed quite well as well, even though I wasn't deadlifting from the floor. So this is something to think about, and this is something that allowed me to explore my full potential as a natural bodybuilder because I wasn't fighting this unnecessary injury situation all the time. So that's really what it's like when you're running a race towards a goal. You have to discard what's not working for you. And sometimes you get a lot farther doing that than just trying to do everything and be great at everything. If you do that, a lot of times you'll end up just splitting yourself in two, right? It's like trying to stand on both sides of the fence and then you end up with a pole up your ass. It's like that. So you have to make sure that if something's not working, just discard it and move forward. And that way you're going to get a lot more potential. And I'm going to say this, and a lot of people have said this, deadlifting is one of the most dangerous exercises, especially when you're deadlifting from the floor, because it does put you in a compromised position, especially with the lower back. And the lower back is already a pretty, let's just say, overworked body part for the most part when it comes down to when you're doing a lot of the compound lifts and so forth. And when you're doing deadlifts, your lower back is taking the majority of the strain. So is it necessary? For natural bodybuilding competition, I'd say no, because you're already getting a lot of lower back work with your squats and Romanian deadlifts and bent over rows and so forth. And I'd say, I think deadlifting is probably a waste of time for a lot of us and poses more of a danger than a benefit in the long run. Mountain. So yeah, that's my experience. That's the exercise that I discarded during my natural bodybuilding career for my benefit. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. So I hope this helps you out in your training. Thanks a lot for watching. If you need to get a hold of me, just go to naturalgallantbodybuilding.com. And thanks to the Patreon supporters, and take care for now. And I'll see you on the podcast. If you haven't been there so far, I'll see you on Patreon for the podcast. Natural Gallant.